getting exactly the right angle and position and distance from the bottom of the plane so that it creates a real low pressure and sucks the air out the bottom. You can see here's our intake. So we get lots of good clean air filtered and some ram air effect. This exhaust here on this side is, you can see the intercooler in there. The intercooler lets you run a lot more efficient with your turbo and keeping your inlet temps down so you can run higher boost without the risk of detonation. We don't really run the airplane boosted a lot, just for takeoff and for climb, and the turbocharged mainly so we can maintain horsepower at high altitudes. But this airplane, we put a scoop on the side and added a larger oil cooler, moved it out of the front and put this one here, and oil temps sit consistently around 190, 195, and cylinder temps sit at about 360 to 370. Some of the things we did to help keep the cylinders down, besides the lip on the bottom, is we built a completely encased right up to the back of the flywheel, aluminum shield so the air can't dump from the top of the flywheel down underneath and dump all your high pressure down into your low pressure without forcing it through the cylinders. So that's a lot of talking to say we're really excited that not only does this airplane always stay cool on its cylinders and oil, but it does it while running a turbo. And that was something to accomplish. And this engine and turbo setup's been really, really good to us. We do a lot of high altitude stuff. We live here in the mountains. In fact, we haven't ever had this plane down at sea level. But having an engine, before we put the turbo system on this plane, it just really couldn't do high altitude. It was a great two-seat airplane, but putting the turbo in it made it a real four-seat airplane. It can go to any altitude. We've landed up on airstrips at 9,800 feet, filled up, and you get off the ground in a few hundred feet when other airplanes won't even try to land at those altitudes, especially in the summer with the density altitudes getting up 12,000, 13,000 feet. This gets on and off anything. Right, coming to the inside of the airplane, first thing you'll notice, we set up struts to lift our doors instead of having the latch on the outside holding it, which you can't reach from in the seat. So with that simple strut, it lifts the door, holds it open for you, easy to get in and out of the airplane without it hanging down or having to hang it on the latch. On the inside, you can see we kept it very lightweight, very clean, simple and comfortable, but no excess as far as weight, one to keep it light. In the back here, you'll see a baggage area that you don't see on 801s. So we felt like we wanted enough room to be able to put in some backpacks, hiking day packs, and it's been really nice. You'll see the bell crank on the inside here and completely encased so that nobody can get anything stuck on it. You don't have that hole in the side of the airplane like we talked about. Here is another nice thing. 801s, you'll always see a fuel line coming down the side here. I didn't like that, so our fuel lines are completely encased and hidden. They're not visible, making it look cheap. And you can see here's where we've encased it so that you can't see a fuel line. And up here, you have a fuel selector for inboard or outboard. We have those custom made. Inboard or outboard, you can also switch it off, but you just pull out on the knob. Same on the pilot side, inboard or outboard. And so you can choose exactly which fuel tank you're running from. And then down here, you can select from the left wing, the right wing, or both. And so generally what we do is leave that on both, and we'll fly and burn off both outboard wings, and then we can switch them to the inboard wings and burn off the inboard. But of course, by switching to the left wing and switching to outboard or inboard, you could pick and burn one fuel all the way completely empty, which is actually been very nice to have when we're traveling with friends. Another thing we did for fuel, we have a friend with a Super Cub. He doesn't carry enough fuel. And so one of our tanks, we've got a fuel tank here. There's a regular fuel strainer. The push up and then this fuel strainer, you can actually lock it open. And so we carry a fuel line that we can slip over the top of that. We can lock it open, and We won't use any fuel out of that. It's 15 gallons, so we can fly way into the back country and then take fuel out of that gas tank, easily put it in a gas can and put it in our friend's Super Cub so he can make it back. That way we don't have to get a Jeep and carry fuel into our destinations. Okay, so on the panel, we've got Dynon avionics. We've got an AvMap GPS. It's got terrain on it. We've got XM radio and nice transponder and radio. And our engine instruments on Dynon's over there. If we cycle through these, you can see the screens that we have available. Here's the hours on the plane. We've got 205 on the TAC, 239 on the Hobbs. You can see on this page we set it up. So it's really simple. Here's our outboard wings. We got 15 gallons plus, 14 gallons plus. Inboard wings, 10 gallons and 12 gallons. So we've been using it. I got a low fuel pressure alarm. I want to point out, when any alarm goes off on this screen or that screen, you'll see a red light flashing. We put in an extra red light tied into the Dynons so that it really gets your attention so you can't miss the alert. Of course, the engine's not running. So I've got a low TIT alarm, low oil pressure alarm. When I shut them off, that light stops flashing, as well as that light over there. This GPS is turning off because I didn't acknowledge it when it first powered up. Okay, so here on this page, you've got your primary flight display. You can see it's 75 degrees. Our density altitude here, we're at 4,500 feet at our airport. Density altitude displayed right there at 6,520. You can see why we love having a turbo. You got your gallons per hour fuel flow, your fuel pressure, our fuel tanks and wings. You got our fuel computer. I got 52.4 gallons remaining. It tells you gallons used, how much time remaining, and your miles per gallon while you're flying, and how many gallons of fuel you'll have at your waypoint. So the Dynon is actually tied into the GPS. So again, it's really nice. You have a range, how much fuel you have left at your current power setting and speed, and gallons at waypoint. So what it's doing is it's tied into the GPS, and whatever waypoint you program into the GPS, it will do the math consistently as you're flying and tell you you have 12 gallons remaining when you get to your waypoint, or you could pull the power back and see that you got now 16 gallons remaining at your waypoint, or push the power up, and it's always giving you that information. Over on this screen here, you can see I've got my manifold pressure, top left, RPM, all my cylinder temps, all my EGTs and CHTs. I've got my TIT for my turbo, that's the most important one. My trim is indicated here, your volts, amps, and then I can see my fuel left and right, main tanks, there's 14, 15 gallons, my fuel pressure, my fuel flow in gallons per hour, and then my outboard tanks here, tanks 3 and 4, and then of course how much fuel you've got at different settings. And you can change either screen to display whatever you want them to display, which is great if you're teaching someone to fly. You can have all the information on either screen. Now, another thing we did, you'll see that there is a fuel throttle here in your left hand because you're flying with your right hand. But if in the passenger seat you're flying with your left hand, and we put a throttle in your right hand, and the throttles work together. And so you can instruct in this airplane or have someone else, fly. And then I even put brakes on the passenger side instead of just the pilot side, so that you can fly from either side comfortably and have braking power. And that's not everybody does that. Also, the flap controls are right here, so that while your hand's on the throttle and you're flying, you can run your flaps, and they'll automatically stop when they're full up. They'll automatically stop when you go full down. And same with the passenger side. There's a flap control right there for the passenger as well. So you can control, and then we put a switch here so that you can control flaps on the passenger side and trim, or on the pilot side. All right there. One of my favorite mods we did was right here, this boot and this box. Normally the controls attach right underneath here. There's no box here, and we saw down at the ground when we were building, tools and little things would roll underneath this control stick and would get jammed. And so we boxed that in, and it's completely boxed all the way around, so nothing can get under the controls and jam it. We also put a boot on here to make it look nice so nothing can drop down inside there. It keeps it really clean and safe. And then we've got connections for Bose headsets. all the way around and powered, as well as your traditional headsets, both front and back. And then we've got an auxiliary audio input, which is great because our kids, like when my wife's flying, they like to plug in a movie and listen to the movie through the intercom system. And everybody can listen and watch a movie while they're traveling. And then of course your necessary, backup instruments and audio panel up on the top. Another place we put a boot, as opposed to just right here, is right up in the front. It may be tough to see, but there's boots coming through the firewall. That's not normally there. That's actually usually just a slit so that these rods here can go up and down as the nose gear goes up and down over bumps. And so you have a very large slit in the wall here, which lets stinky, dirty engine smell into the cabin. And I also concern about carbon dioxide. And so we found some boots that would work and boxed that in. And now when you fly the plane, a couple hundred hours on the plane, the inside of this plane smells like new airplane, new carpet, new paint. Not a bit of stinky fuel or gas smell in the plane at all. It just smells as good as it did the day it was finished. And of course, quiet and comfortable without all the air leaks. Another thing we did was put 12-volt power everywhere you might want it. So the pilot has 12-volt power right here, so he can set a cell phone between the seats and have it charging. Another power outlet for the passenger side here. And of course you've got to have power on the back for the kids and their iPods and entertainment, so they can plug in 12-volt power there. And we've got large alternator in the plane, so we've never had any problems powering anything we want. Another thing, these doors tend to suck open when they're flying because of the low pressure on the outside. So they latch in the front, which is great, but again, I don't like a lot of wind. And so we put also a latch in the back, and just pulling that latch down keeps the back sucked in tight so the people in the back aren't complaining about their hair blowing around in their face. And so that was a nice little add, which any of you could do simply as well. One of the other things we liked about this airplane is that you can fly it with the doors off. So we've got a quick release pin that you can pull here, and just in a matter of seconds, literally remove the doors and go do flower bombing competitions at your local airport. We have in-cabin controls adjustments on the turbo. So we have it set so that when you go full throttle, it'll just go at our altitude, it'll go to 30 inches manifold pressure. But right here is a dial, and each click gives you about another inch of manifold pressure. And so you can preset manifold pressure so that when you're ready to take off on an airstrip, you can just go full throttle. It'll take you right to the desired manifold pressure instantly and not overboost, which is very nice when you're trying to stay on a skinny little strip and not hit rocks, so you just want to get airborne and as quick as possible without having to worry about overboosting the engine. So it has automatic boost control on the turbo, and you can turn up the boost as high as you want with the system we've got and the compression on the cylinders. We've got it limited on the red line at 38 inches. You could turn it higher than that. I wouldn't recommend it. A lot of people have asked why this tail sweeps up so high, and that's so that you can get the high angle of attack like a tail dragger airplane without having to have a tail dragger. So for my wife it was great to be able to taxi around at night simply with lots of lights and visibility, not looking over her nose, and lower insurance to not have a tail dragger. But this tail is so steep that when you take off, before you can get that tail light or hook to even come close to the ground, it's already flying, and will put that wing at a lot higher angle of attack than Super Cub can, unless you've got some like 35-inch tires. Then I think you're about the same angle of attack. It's a great airplane. We've flown it all over Mexico, down into the beaches of San Felipe, and we've been into Ensenada and Alfonsinas, landed there on the beach for lunch. It's been very reliable and carries a lot of weight. Doesn't go fast, but that's not what it's made to do. But it can get on and off of any airstrip with 4 people, like a bush plane, like a Super Cub, only, 2 extra seats. So So that's the end.